For geography this week, we are in Europe and Asia, and you could use a close-up map of Europe. It's just not going to show all of Siberia, so I chose to use the full world map. And this week you could have them review some of the geographical locations they've already learned in this area, like the Ural Mountains and the Volga River and the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea. You can have them and the Baltic Sea, and also their continents. So it would be helpful for them to review their continents, like Europe and Asia at least, because that'll come into play just a little bit with the poem/song that I'm using. So I'm using CC Happy Mom's song, and if you didn't want to use her song, you could just do the poem because it's just kind of helpful in moving around the map. But she has them find the Black Sea to start, and then she actually points out Constantinople, which is at the heel of the boot. So she says, Eastern Europe geography, find the Black Sea, go to the heel, Constantinople, also called Istanbul. And then she says, kick up to Kiev in the Ukraine, march up to Moscow, the capital of Russia, cross the Ural Mountains into Siberia, also in Asia, also in Russia. And so that's helpful to say, like, this is still Russia, but it is in Asia. And so you can see Russia, they've got it divided here by Siberia and Russia. But I think that would be helpful, just the poem, to move around. The only part that you really don't need to include at all is this part about Constantinople. Okay, so you can listen to her sing it and do the whole part about going to the heel and it being Constantinople and also known as Istanbul. But if you wanted to cut that part out so that you're just doing like the CC geography, you could do Eastern Europe geography, find the Black Sea, kick up to Kiev in the Ukraine, march up to Moscow, the capital of Russia, cross the Ural Mountains into Siberia, also in Asia, but also in Russia. So you could just cut out that little beginning part. If you listen to her do it, you could do it that way, I mean, whatever. But if you wanted to cut that part out, it also works to still use the tune of bingo and just include everything else that she has on there. There's a couple of different songs. Mary Kay Bryant has one that you can download off of CC Connected. Another tutor does it to the tune of Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. And basically, you just kind of try to fit all of the pronouns from week 11 to 13 in the tune before you get to the part that's like, glory, glory, hallelujah. Like I've always sing the Band of Brothers version of this song where they say gory, gory. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But you want to get all of them in before the like tune goes to that part. So I'll try to do it. But like she was saying, it kind of is like every time it's a little bit different. So if you don't like doing this, there is another version out there that is, you can download it from CC Connected. Okay, so you do, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna sing all of week 11, 12, and 13 for each 3 weeks. We're gonna sing the whole thing so that they'll learn all of them. It's kind of a lot of indefinite pronouns, and I'll have them also write these out.
All, another, any, anybody, anyone, anything, both, each, either, everybody, everyone, everything, few, many, more, most, neither, nobody, none, one, other, several, some, somebody, someone, such. These are indefinite pronouns. These are indefinite pronouns. These are indefinite pronouns, weeks 11, 12, and 13. all, another, any, anybody, anyone, anything, both, each, either, everybody, everyone, everything, few, many, more, most, neither, nobody, none, one, other, several, some, somebody, someone, such.
For Latin, we have a new set of endings. We have the future perfect tense. So my visual is an arrow for this week. So I have my arrow pointer, and I'll also have like an arrow just on my board pointing upwards. And so for the future perfect tense, the idea here is our arrow can remind us that as Christians, our future is perfect. Our future in heaven with the Lord will be so perfect. And so you can remember, as Christians, when we look forward to the future, we have a perfect future in heaven with the Lord. And so I'm just, for this first week, I'm going to just let them take turns using my pointer to point to the endings as we sing through them. For science, I have a couple of ideas in mind. I'm not sure what I'm going to do just yet, but for the phases of the moon, we have new, crescent, quarter, gibbons, and full. So if you wanted to use hand motions, you could just do like a closed fist, because the new moon is the one that you can't see. It just looks like you can't see the moon. So new, crescent, quarter, like make a semicircle. Gibbons, you're going to open your hand a little bit more to where it's almost a full circle, but you're going to make it to where it's not quite a full circle. And then a full moon is the full, big, bright moon. You can see the whole thing. So there's the motions, which I think will help them remember when they look at the moon, they can remember what the phase is. But another one, you could just have them draw the moon. I also have lots of graphics that show like the different, what it looks like in the sky with the different phases. So you could let them point to the different phases as we say them. They could draw them because they're very simple to draw. It won't take them long to do that. So a few really cute ideas if you wanted to do like something crafty. You could just give them like a paper plate, and then in the center of the plate they could draw the earth. So just tell them draw a blue ball and put some green on it to make it look like the earth, and then have them draw at the top a moon that's colored in black for the new moon. And then for the crescent moon, a black circle, but then leave a little sliver that is white. And then for the quarter moon, they do another one, and half of it's colored black and the other half is white. And then for gibbous, it's the one where it's almost all the way white. So do a circle and then just cover a sliver of it black. And then for the full moon, they just draw a circle. And so you could have them just draw it around the earth the way that the moon, goes around. We have cubes this week. So when I had little ones last year, I did this with them where I gave them a sheet that has the cubes and the three-dimensional drawings of the cubes with the numbers in them, and they colored them. This one is actually cuter than the actual one I used. So this is just a printout and I colored it. But what I'm gonna do this year, because I have a little bit older kids, so I'm going to show them this, and this is out of that resource I've shared with you a few times. I'll link it again. But she has these math wheels in there, and so I'll show the math wheel, show them how this has 3 numbers before we get to the answer, because you're timesing it 3 times. So with squares, it was x to the second power. So that was like 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. This time, we're timesing the number by itself 3 times, so it's x to the third power. So 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And so they're taking the number from the square, and they're timesing it again in getting this number. So I'll just explain to them the difference between squaring a number and cubing a number. And they might see it in their math by having x to the third power, or whenever you see a number to the third power with that little 3, that's a cube. And then another way to remember it is like when you draw a square, it's just 2-dimensional on the paper. So you can remember a square is 2-dimensional, you're timesing the number by itself just 2 times. Whereas a cube is 3-dimensional and you're going to times the number by itself 3 times. For timeline motions, we have Norman conquest and feudalism in Europe, which will remind them we had that history sentence in I think week 2 of William the Conqueror, the Norman, yes, and started feudalism in Europe. So this is our connection to week 2 history. So for Norman conquest and feudalism in Europe, we're going to conquer Norman conquest and feudalism in Europe. We're going to use our sign for feudalism to show the levels of the society. And then for the Crusades, again, another tie to our history that we've learned this year, which is from week 3, where we learned about Richard the Lionhearted who fought in the Crusades. So we're going to make a cross over our heart, and it's going to go out for the Crusades. And then Zimbabwe means enclosure or wall of stone. So you're going to make 2 B's, but face them towards yourself, and you're just going to make a wall. So Zimbabwe in early Mali in Africa. So you're going to do an M with the 3 fingers over your thumb, Mali, and then do gold. Mali in Africa, sign for gold because Mali dominated the gold trade. Aztecs of Mesoamerica, you're just going to trace a triangle in front of you to show the pyramids that the Aztecs made. And remember, we've talked about the Aztecs before where they made those pyramids with the stones all the way to the top. But this time we're just drawing a triangle. And then Francis of Assisi and Thomas Aquinas, we're going to make an F, which is just like A-OK, and then do a T. We'll pull up the old chart here so that I can make sure I don't do it wrong. Oh no, it is a T. Okay, so and then you do a T for Thomas Aquinas. I was right. Okay, Japan's shoguns, you're just going to pretend to pull out a sword from your opposite hip. And then Incas of South America, they lived in the Andes Mountains. So we're going to make a mountain, and then we're going to climb the mountain to the music. For history, I'm going to do motions. So in the beginning, it's like drumming, like a march. So we're going to march, and then in 1789, so you can just keep marching if you want, or you could do 1789, and they just put up, 1789, the French, just kind of like flick the F, just kind of flick it out. During the French Revolution, an R. Citizens stormed the Bastille, so you're just going to march some more. Stormed the Bastille and fought for the Declaration of the Rights of Man. And so I just kind of like slowly pull my thumbs into myself while saying that. And then you're going to march a little bit more. There's a little music right here. And then later, so you can do like later, or you can point to your watch and say later, or you can go like this with your thumb. Something to indicate later during the Reign of Terror. So we just kind of act like the crown. So saying the Reign of Terror is like who is ever's in charge. The Reign of Terror. The aristocrats, and so just sip a cup of tea. The aristocrats' heads. So you're going to put like both hands here like you're choking. And so we're going to do heads were removed. And so you kind of like pull your hands apart, like removed by guillotine. So it's very like dun dun da da, the music. And so you can kind of move each of these with the music. So I'm going to do it one more time. So in 1789 or in 1789, The French Revolution began when citizens stormed the Bastille and fought for the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Later, during the Reign of Terror, the aristocrats' heads were removed by guillotine. Let's talk about the French Revolution. So I have read the timeline card number 110. I've read from Everything You Need to Know About World History homework, from the Story of the World, and online encyclopedias like the Britannica, and also a website called Ducksters, where they have lots of history lessons and articles on there, and also games and word puzzles, crossword puzzles, things that you can do directly related to, like this week's is on the French Revolution. So I've provided the link if you want to check those out. And I am just going to try to provide you with a concise understanding of the French Revolution. I am not going to be able to get into everything that happened. There will be lots of things that I leave out, lots of details and cool, interesting facts that I just don't have time to get into in this video. Now, I am not an expert on this. I'm just trying to provide you with a concise nugget of information so that you can have some grasp of an understanding on what happened in the French Revolution. And my hope is that it will spark your interest in history and that you will want to learn more about these major historical events, that you'll want to read and do research, and that it will be interesting to you like it's interesting to me. So let's get into it. Our history sentence this week says, in 1789, the French Revolution began when citizens stormed the Bastille and fought for the Declaration of the Rights of Man. Later, during the Reign of Terror, the aristocrats' heads were removed by the guillotine. So, what was the French Revolution? The French Revolution was a period of time in France when the people overthrew the monarchy and took control of the government. What was the desired outcome of the revolution? What did these revolutionaries want? Well, you can see here, this is a well-known revolutionary slogan that states the three main goals: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty meaning that everyone would have all of their natural rights and freedoms. Equality meant that everyone would be equal in the eyes of the government. Do away with privilege. Do away with the feudal system. Fraternity meaning brotherhood. This was the desire that everyone would get along and respect each other's rights. So what caused the French Revolution? In order to understand what caused the revolution, we need to take a moment to understand what life was like for the people of France. Now remember when we talked about feudalism in Europe and how there's levels of society? Well, before the French Revolution, France was about as feudal of a regime as it gets. It had these three estates, or these three levels in society. You had the church and the clergy, nobles, and the king was an absolute monarch. So he was not bound to a constitution that he had to rule from. He was the head honcho.
The king and the nobles lived very well and paid very few taxes. They lived in luxury and had all of the high-ranking jobs. Then the third estate was the common people. These are the people who paid most of the taxes, and sometimes they starved because the taxes were so high. And most of the French population was in this estate. And you can see in this little picture here, these are members of the first or second estate, the nobles. So the country is set up in these classes, this feudal system. And this was an unfair system of government where the king and his court had absolute power and the government was bankrupt. So, like I said, we've got these levels in society where the rich paid very few taxes and the common people were forced to pay most of the taxes. This meant that the rich lived in extravagance, while the majority of the country lived in extreme poverty. And when the king needed even more taxes, when the country needed more money, the common people refused. Food was also scarce. Bread, which was the main part of a peasant's diet, was priced very high by 1789. And you can see here Marie Antoinette saying, "Let them eat cake." Well, she probably didn't really say that, but it is a good image. It's a good idea for you to have in your mind of sort of her attitude towards the people. The monarchy was indifferent to the fact that these people were starving and living in poverty, and it was just more than the people could take. So they formed the National Assembly. So at this time, France was fighting a war and they needed to figure out how to pay for this expensive war. So their king called a meeting with representatives from each of the estates to discuss raising money and increasing taxes. The third estate, the common people, tried to use this meeting to reform the government, but the king refused to give them any power. So they formed the National Assembly. The National Assembly met at a tennis court and decided to demand a new constitution, and they agreed to stay together until one was written. So it's called the Oath of the Tennis Court. This group of people took control of the government during the Revolution. So we have the storming of the Bastille. What is a Bastille? It's a storehouse of ammunition. It had lots of gunpowder, and it was the royal prison. The Bastille was a symbol of the monarchy's rule as dictators. So the storming of the Bastille marked the beginning of the French Revolution, when an angry mob attacked the Bastille and seized control. And on July 14th, every July 14th in France, they celebrate Bastille Day as their Independence Day. The Declaration of the Rights of Man. This declared France as a constitutional monarch, meaning France would be ruled by a constitution and the power of the monarch would be limited. So when they stormed the Bastille and they fought for the Declaration of the Rights of the Men, this is what they were fighting for. Limit the monarchy's power in France to be ruled by a constitution. So this man, Marquis de Lafayette, wrote France's Declaration of the Rights of Man. He also collaborated with Thomas Jefferson to write America's Declaration of Independence, and it is said that he fought alongside Americans in the Revolutionary War, but he was a very important figure in the French Revolution. Just as a note, while this was happening in France, at the same time, the American Revolution was also happening. The Reign of Terror. So later, during the Reign of Terror, this is what we're talking about. From the summer of 1793 to 1794, the revolution was increasingly more violent. At this point, the revolutionaries had overpowered the monarchy and they had taken control of the country. The revolutionary leaders were known as the Committee of Public Safety. Soon, the Reign of Terror was instituted and the revolutionary leaders began to use fear and violence by executing hundreds of people each week. Why? Well, they feared that not enough people supported the revolution, so they killed those who were against the revolution. And some of those people we learn about in our history sentence. It says the aristocrats' heads were removed by the guillotine. So why were the aristocrats heads removed. Well, the aristocrats were killed during the French Revolution because of the anger felt by the masses of the poor French citizens. Aristocrats were nobles or members of the French monarchy, and the revolution was all about changing the relationship between the rulers and the people they governed. The guillotine. This is a little bit of a gruesome picture here. You can see the guillotine and you can see the person laying there and what's happened to them. This device consists of a heavy blade that is dropped between the two guideposts onto the neck of one sentenced to death. This was widely used during the French Revolution to behead aristocrats. So how did the revolution end? The revolution ended after the Reign of Terror and the deaths of the most ruthless leaders. After the chaos of the revolution, a military genius named Napoleon Bonaparte got France in shape. He brought order and was very successful in turning France into an empire. And we'll talk more about him in week 12. Why is the French Revolution important? I just am going to quote this website. I thought they said it so well. The French Revolution completely changed the social and political structure of France. It put an end to the French monarchy, feudalism, and it took political power from the Catholic Church. It brought new ideas to Europe, including liberty and freedom for the commoner, as well as the abolishment of slavery and the rights of women. Although the revolution ended with the rise of Napoleon, the ideas and reforms did not die. These new ideas continued to influence Europe and helped to shape many of Europe's modern-day governments.